All right, from the Wetzel's Automotive Traffic Center, time to take one last look at your traffic and weather for your ride in on this Tuesday morning. Have a couple accidents to report, one at Percival Road and Decker Boulevard, another one at I-20 eastbound and Bush River Road, another one at Two Notch Road and I-77. High today, a sweltering 91 degrees with a chance for isolated thunderstorms later on. Tomorrow, same high of 91 with some wind, and then Thursday, bright and sunny with a high of 87. That's traffic and weather from Wetzel's Automotive Traffic Center here in the early game. Nine o'clock, Tuesday morning. Welcome in, Extra Point, Tyler Head, and the beginning of what is going to be a very, very long day for Jack Veltri. As you are here in studio with me now, and I'm imagining as soon as the show's over, you're hitting the road. Is that correct?
Bags are packed, cars loaded, and yes, I'm heading straight to the magnificent, the wonderful Hoover, Alabama. And, I originally told you I was going to do the show from the car.
Right, which is fine.
Which is fine. And then I looked at the on Apple Maps, you can kind of like forecast, a later time to see how long it would take you to get there.
Okay.
And if I left at 10, I'd get there about 2:15. Mm-hmm. And then game's not till 4:30 Central Time. So I got about 2 hours in between there. I'm going straight to the stadium. So I'm only going to probably stop once for gas and food, and then I'll probably be there like 2:45 probably.
How far off I-20 is Hoover?
It's not that far off. It's probably like a few miles, I think, really.
So the majority of your ride, you're just on I-20 the entire time?
I think pretty much. Because once you get off the Hoover exit, it's like probably 2 miles to the stadium from there. So, yeah.
Do you like and again, you drive all over the Southeast to cover these teams. Do you prefer drives where it's mainly just on one road, or do you like something that's going to consistently change as you're going along?
Probably consistently change a little bit to where it's like, I don't like doing back roads,
Right.
So if I'm on the main highway, it's probably going to change. So, I can't remember, honestly. It's been a little bit since I made this drive to Alabama, so I can't remember if it does change or not, but we'll see.
The monotony of driving in one direction on the same road over and over, like, I hope you're going to have some kind of drink to give you a little, you're not like a caffeine guy.
Yeah, I will definitely be all right. I'll definitely get something to drink to get me going. So.
That's my thing is like if I'm, because like my parents live right off I-20, so when I drive back home, it's basically 2.5 hours. You're going to drive through my hometown at some point today of just on I-20, and you can almost kind of zone out, right?
You know where
you're going, you're aware of what's going on, so it's not like you're going to run into the back of someone, but, you'll go like 10 minutes and be like, oh, I don't remember the past 10 minutes because I've just been doing the same thing the entire time, listening to music or a podcast or whatever.
That's how it's going to be for about 5 hours today, so, but... No, I'm looking forward to getting out there. I enjoy the Hoover Met. Last year was my first experience, and I kept hearing about how bad it can be with the weather and stuff, and just being out there is a drag. But last year was fun. The weather was great. So
I will say that's almost kind of a staple of the SEC tournament every single year is, weather is going to cause some kind of delay at some point. Now, there is weather in the forecast today, but it's not until much later on tonight. So I think South Carolina should be good to get their game in. Now, the fourth game of the day, I forget who's playing the fourth game, but that might get compromised by weather a little bit. But after that, it seems like it's going to be nice for the rest of the week.
Which is good. And, it should be a good time out there, regardless of if it's one game or multiple. But We'll see, man. This is South Carolina's chance to right every wrong they've had this year, but they gotta win 5 games, and I believe it's I think they would get an off day, so maybe like 5 days. And
I think Thursday would be an off day if they won the first 2.
So yeah, so 5 games in 5 days basically. So it's gonna be interesting, but yeah, I'm looking forward to getting out there. The SEC tournament, regardless of sport, always treats the media super well with
that's good
food and stuff, and it's a nice little ballpark. So.
Are there things to do in Hoover besides the Met if you did have some time to kill?
I was there for 5 days last year, so I'm trying to remember.
That's true.
I remember going to a movie theater. I went to a bar. Restaurant, pretty much a few things. Not anything like Birmingham's actually not super far. I do remember
it's a suburb of Birmingham, right?
Yeah, I do remember going into Birmingham for like a morning or something and going to the city. So that there is that, but there's really not a ton to do in the Hoover area.
Isn't because Hoover High School, obviously, and Hoover, I think it's one of like the nicer high schools with like facility wise, like in the country, right?
I'll have to check. I don't remember passing by Hoover High School.
Because that's where Two-A-Days was back on MTV back in the day.
Really?
When Rush Probst was there.
So, and I honestly, like, going through Hoover, like, the exit the ballpark is at, it's nice. Like, I'll say that. Like, the area is fine. It's just, like, I stayed in, I'm trying to remember what town I stayed in, but it was, like, a few exits ahead, and it was nothing like what you see when you get to Hoover. Very what you think of Alabama, middle of nowhere, so... We'll see.
Well, South Carolina's got a task ahead of them if they want to continue to play baseball into the month of June. They're going to have to go on a crazy run over the next 6 days out there in Hoover, and we'll get into that coming up in just a second, but it is 9 o'clock. We've got to kick things off with our Sandstorm Pick-Me-Up.
Time to get hyped.
Here's your 9 a.m. Sandstorm.
Sponsored by George Sink Injury Lawyers. Just call all nines.
It is time for 9 a.m. Sandstorm Pick Me Up, brought to you by South Carolina's largest injury law firm, George Sink Injury Lawyers. If you've been hurt in the car or at work, call George Sink now at 803-ALL-9s.
Well, I don't think there was much of an option if you're going to invite 16 teams to the tournament. It was hard enough when there was an 8-team tournament many years ago, and then it went from 8 to 10 to 12, and now 16. I really don't think there were many options. But I think it's great that everybody gets a chance to participate in it. And I think softball's been an elimination, single elimination for years. And, I mean, given a choice, sure, anybody would prefer a double elimination. But I just don't think it's possible with that many teams. So, yeah, I'm happy they're doing it this way.
Bob Maneri yesterday talking to you guys in the media scrum about the new format of the SEC tournament. Of course, the league expanded by 2 teams, adding Texas and Oklahoma this past year, and they changed the format of the tournament as well. It used to be you had to be in the top 12 of the 14-team SEC to even get an invite. Now it is all 16 teams in a single elimination format. You do have seeds 1 through 4 getting buys all the way into Thursday and Friday, and then you have seeds 5 through 8 getting buys to tomorrow. So South Carolina has got to be thankful that this is a full conference tournament now, or else they wouldn't have got invited because they are in the bottom 2 of the league.
Yeah, it's just kind of crazy how bad they've been this year, and yet they're still going to the tournament. Like they have a chance to get to the NCAA tournament, but albeit it's a very minuscule, like, I don't even know what the percentages would be on this, something like this. But no, you're right, though. I mean, if they were to win the first 2 games, they wouldn't have to play until Friday, albeit they got to play an Arkansas team that killed them earlier this season. So, look, we're thinking way too far down the road. They may not even win today, but you hope that at the very least they can continue to show some fight and push Florida to the brink, and maybe it'll be enough today. You're not facing their top guy today. You're facing. It's fitting that they're facing a Clemson transfer today. So we'll see if that can end their season or if they can continue on. But they gotta win in advance, survive in advance, I guess.
We've obviously drawn so many comparisons between baseball and what men's basketball did this past season. And, of course, men's basketball also went into the SEC tournament knowing, hey, if you want to make the NCAA, you got to run the table and win this entire thing, out in Nashville. What's harder, winning the men's basketball tournament with your back up against the wall or winning the SEC baseball tournament?
Me personally, I think it's tougher winning the SEC tournament for baseball because going back to last year, and last year the format was different, like you alluded to, in that lesser teams made it, only 12. But the difference was if you won the first game, you enter the double elimination. So this is just single elimination the whole way through. That makes it easier to some extent because I think you're probably playing less games in a way. But in South Carolina's case, you're probably playing 5 games in 6 days, and that takes a toll on your pitching because by the end of the tournament, we saw it last year where the last game South Carolina played against LSU, they started Roman Kimball on the mound. He hadn't pitched in like 3 weeks.
Yep.
You threw Sam Simpson out of relief. He hadn't pitched since March. Michael Polk, I think, pitched. He hadn't pitched since God knows when. I can't even remember. So you're throwing a bunch of guys that you would never normally throw under these circumstances, but you have to because you're out of pitching. And so that's what this tournament does. It really does test how your pitching depth is. And with South Carolina, I don't even know how it's going to look just because their pitching has just been bad this year. And these guys have not developed the way they should be. But we'll see. I mean, hey, crazy things can happen in baseball, but
yeah,
this will definitely wear you out mentally and probably physically too, playing so many games in so many days.
Now, if they got eliminated today, would you make the drive back tonight, or are you waiting until tomorrow?
Nah, so I would not make the drive back tonight. I have done that before where I made the drive back after that LSU game and got back at like 2 in the morning, I think. Yeah. But the only reason I wouldn't is because I have a hotel booked.
Okay.
So I'm definitely going to stay tonight, and then I would check out like first thing. Probably not tomorrow morning, but like by like midday, I'd be on my way back.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And again, hopefully you don't have a tire issue like the last time, or one of the last times you traveled to Alabama.
Yeah, that was. I thought about that on the way in. I'm like, I swear to gosh, I get something wrong with my tire today. It's going to be a big problem.
Well, again, this time tomorrow we could be talking about the season finally coming to an end for South Carolina. Obviously, it's been a lot of bad with very few moments of good mixed in there. And I think as a fan base, you almost kind of want to just end, right? Like don't string us along any longer than you already have. Like, yeah, if you win against Florida today, okay, that's cool. But I don't know if there's anybody that thinks they can legitimately make it through the other 4 games this weekend. Like you said, with the lack of depth that you have at pitching, obviously offense not being consistent, like it just doesn't seem like it's in the cards for this team to pull something like that off.
You don't have Ethan Petrie out there this week, so you're kind of just, I mean, you've flown without him for the last few weeks here, but you're going to be missing him big time. And, yeah, look, I don't blame the fan base for being checked out. I also don't blame them for the fact of, not coming out to the ballpark like they had been, even going back to earlier this season. And I know that's something that Paul mentioned yesterday, but, yeah, it's, it's just been a long year, and I think a lot of folks are ready for it to kind of just come to an end.
Well, it has been, by the way, that game today at 5:30, which you can listen to pregame coverage starting at 5:15 right here on 107.5 The Game. We'll see if it gets like an actual 5:30 first pitch because timing always gets thrown off immediately when you have 2 other games playing before you out there in Hoover.
Yeah, whether it's the weather or if the game is just going too long, you have to wait, I think, 30 minutes in between each game. So we'll see if they do play on time today. Again, everything ran so smoothly last year. I think that was the case, but we'll see if that's the case this year.
At some point this offseason, we're going to investigate why college baseball games are taking so long now, even with a pitch clock, because, yes, like you said, you have to have the 30-minute gap between games. Missouri and Alabama start at 10:30 this morning. If they played an exact 3-hour game, that means Kentucky and Oklahoma would be able to start at 2 o'clock. And if they played an exact 3-hour game, that means that South Carolina and Florida would be able to play at 5:30. But again, I'm not thinking that's going to happen. So somewhere between 5:30, maybe like 6:15 will probably be first pitch tonight.
Yeah, and the good news is there are run rules. So
there are, that's true.
Missouri maybe gets hammered today, and maybe that'll make a big difference.
Hey, Missouri actually ended with a little bit of momentum. They did not have the offer in conference.
And then they got demolished by Mississippi State to end the year. So, I mean, some of the losses they had, dude, were bad.
We'll see what happens. Again, Missouri and Alabama get rolling coming up at 10:30. As rough as a season as it's been for South Carolina baseball and men's basketball, and we kind of talk about the balance between the good and the bad for South Carolina sports as a whole this year. I'm going to steal a page from Bill and Preston's playbook coming up next, because at least we ain't this school in the SEC. I'll tell you who that is coming up next. It is the Extra Point, Tyler Head and Jack Beltry on your Monday on the Game.
get the job done.
Payoff is on the way. Swing and a miss. Ball game over. Liberty breaks through. It does the unthinkable. It knocks out the #1 overall seed and is moving on to its first ever Super Regional.
There's always somebody worse off than you. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyra Head and Jack Beltree. That was the call on Sunday out in College Station, where the Liberty Flames softball team upset the #1 overall seed, Texas A&M, to eliminate them from their home regional and prevent them from getting to a super. Again, this was the top overall seed in the entire country. People are already probably booking their hotels for Oklahoma City coming up here in a couple weeks, and Liberty, of all teams, comes in there and pulls off the upset and sends them packing. And I saw this on over the weekend. It was one of the bigger storylines of all of the first round of the softball tournament. And do you ever, when you're on Twitter and you start interacting with certain type of posts and stuff, you start seeing a lot more of them in your timeline? We had the guy from A&M on the other week when we were doing kind of our opponent previews, and since then I've been getting a lot of A&M stuff on my timeline just because, again, we talked to him and I'd read through some of his tweets and stuff like that. I didn't really think about how tough of a year it had been for A&M folks, and unfortunately Sunday was kind of the icing on the very spoiled cake that A&M has had to deal with going back to the beginning of football season. It's been a rough go out there in College Station. So as up and downs it's been for South Carolina, like football was good, women's basketball was good till the end. Obviously softball, their chapters not yet finished being written yet for what they're going to do, but baseball and men's basketball were kind of rough. But at least we ain't, in the words of Bill and Preston from the morning show, at least we ain't in College Station right now.
Yeah, it really does suck to be an Aggie right now, I would say. And those are really nice people out there. Like, from seeing, going to College Station about a month and a half ago now, you hate it for them because, they're pretty nice. But, it's been a rough year. Let's recap it. So,
yes, please.
#1, softball, overall seed in the NCAA tournament.
Yep.
Gets bounced in their own regional by a mid-major. Baseball preseason #1. #1 overall entering the preseason.
After playing for the national championship last year, which then in turn lost their coach, their biggest rival. That was fun.
Yeah, and I think that kind of set the wheels in motion.
That's where the bad stuff started.
Yep. And so A&M, they got swept by Missouri, had a great chance to make the NCAA tournament, probably as a 2 or 3 seed.
Missouri team that had not won a game yet, by the way.
Yes. They need to now win the SEC tournament probably to get themselves back in the conversation.
They at least need to get themselves, I think, to
Friday or Saturday.
Probably Saturday. Because they're right now on D1 Baseball's projections, they're on the outside looking in.
Yeah, and they're not going to make it if they get bounced by Mississippi State today. That's the last game of the day. Men's basketball loses in the round of 32. Buzz Williams leaves for Maryland. Women's basketball misses the tournament. Football lost 4 of their last 5 games, also including losing to Texas.
Remember, they came in here as a number 10 team.
Yes.
They were they had one loss.
That's where the downfall started.
Yeah, they had lost to Notre Dame in week 1 and went on, I think it was a 7-game winning streak. Came in here, number 10 team in the country. Again, South Carolina fans stormed the field after that win and all that kind of stuff. And then they lost 4 of their last 5.
Yeah, and not to mention losing to Texas to end the regular season. And what they lost
in the rebirth of one of the biggest and most anticipated rivalries in college football.
And then they lose to Southern Cal in the Vegas Bowl.
Yes, and the icing on that cake, despite all that, you still paid Jimbo $7.2 million to not be your coach.
Who has it worse, man? We talk about Missouri being down bad, but they have a great basketball program now. Their baseball program, they just don't invest.
Football, back-to-back double-digit win seasons.
Exactly. A&M, all the money they spend there, and it's leading to mediocrity at best.
Well, and the reason why, and again, when you had the #1 overall seed in softball, when you're projected to be the #1 overall team in the country in baseball for the season, the expectations on all these sports, for the most part, was set really, really high. And then to not be able to live up to those expectations, again, football got to the top 10, 3/4 of the way through the season and then fell off, a cliff starting with that South Carolina game. That's what's more disappointing, because if nobody expected anything out of you and you lost, okay, whatever. You weren't supposed to be that good anyway. But when people think you're among the best in your respective sport and you fail to live up those expectations, that hurts a lot worse.
I think this just goes to show why preseason rankings don't really mean anything. And, in some cases, the preseason polls are right. Like South Carolina baseball this year and the preseason projections.
They were dead on the money. Well, actually, they were a little too kind because they had them 14th, I think. Right?
Yeah, so, South Carolina's going to finish 15th in the conference, and it's just been rough. But, A&M, to be right in that same group as South Carolina and Missouri, I don't think anyone expected that. And I think it's only going to get worse from here, because if A&M does indeed get bounced today by Mississippi State, we're talking about, all right, does A&M fire Michael Early, their first-year head coach? Personally, I think they should have fired him after the Missouri series, and I just cannot see a way in which that team is far too talented to be this bad. And, yes, I know they have been dealing with injuries this year, but at some point, I think you just kind of have to come to the realization that this team was in the College World Series final. College World Series championship against Tennessee last year.
Yep.
And yes, I know that it was with Schlossnagel, but this is A&M baseball we're talking about.
It is.
You got to be able to get back to that, and I think you just need to go out there and look for a different coach. I think it's just wipe the slate clean, go find a new coach, and go from there.
And look, I don't envy the position that Michael Early got put in. Obviously, he still inherited a very, very good team. But again, as we saw with, when he went from Ray Tanner to Chad Holbrook, and look, that hire, that made perfect sense. Because again, Ray Tanner, it was the guy underneath him. It made sense to transition that power when Ray Tanner, obviously retired. But still, just because you're an assistant on the staff does not mean you're going to be able to bring that team to the same high levels. Obviously, Chad Holbrook was not able to do that with South Carolina coming off the multiple College World Series Finals appearances, and that's why he ended up getting fired a couple years later. And, like you said, it seems to be a lot quicker of a trigger out there in College Station, because this team, at minimum, you should have been, I don't know, is saying you're a top 8 seed hosting a little too high? Maybe, but you should have at least been hosting a regional, I think, in a lot of people's eyes.
For being the number one overall team coming into the season and everything you brought back. Again, Early was on this staff last year, so for him to get promoted, bring all these guys back that wanted to play for him, and for this to be the product you get, guys are underperforming, sure, but at the same time, someone's got to take the blame, and I think your head coach has to in this situation. And it stinks, but it is what it is. And A&M is severely underperformed this year.
If you get a chance to interact and mingle with any A&M fans, get the temperature on how they feel about him. I'm curious.
Oh gosh, I'm sure they're ready for him to be gone.
Because again, they just seem to have infinite money out there, right?
Yeah, and again, I was out there well before things started to crash and burn. Like A&M was just coming off that series win over Tennessee at the time. So things were back in.
They did what they did to South Carolina.
Yep. And then a few weeks later, winless Missouri comes in and just does, not just beats them in one game, but to sweep them.
Yeah.
That's a nail in the coffin right there.
Yeah, that's pretty rough. So there's one storyline that's going to play out over the course of the next couple of days out there in Hoover, and seeing what the future of Texas A&M baseball is. But again, all things considered, at least we ain't Texas A&M, because all their sports have fallen on their face at some point this year.
Yep. Football was great. Women's basketball was great. It's just the other honestly, softball
still doing great.
The women's golf, they are.
Yeah. Hey, there you go.
Yeah, they just missed the match play, so they're a lot of good things going on.
Yeah. So at least we ain't College Station. So there's that. Want to get into some of FanDuel's early lines for the college football season. We did talk a little bit yesterday about the South Carolina-Virginia Tech game. We'll revisit that. Also look at some of the other big matchups for week number 1 as well. That's coming up next. It is The Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Beltry on your Monday. It's Tuesday on the game. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Feltry, 30-ish minutes until he hits the road for Hoover. Today's also the last chance potentially for you to win the Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union Grand Slam giveaway. Though I would hope if they hit a Grand Slam, that would mean that they would win the game. Because if you hit a Grand Slam and a loss, that hurts.
Yeah, it wouldn't shock me. But also, the one thing about Hoover is that it is a pitcher's ballpark.
That's right, it is.
It is.
We talked about that yesterday, that you have a tough time getting it out of there.
Yeah, like South Carolina hit some home runs out there last year, but that team had a lot of power. So this team, I don't know. But I made the joke with Terry last week when he brought up the Grand Slam giveaway. I'm like, so how much money would people win if this were for the visiting team?
Ooh.
Or the other team?
Trying to think.
9 Grand Slams this year.
They've given up 9 Grand Slams this year?
Yeah, man.
Gee, I knew it was
I think
a high
it might
number.
be 8. I can't remember off the top of my head. But it's,
I guess that sounds about right. My God, yeah. It feels like one every about week or so.
And they gave up 4 against Texas A&M. So
that was
it has to be like a record.
Was it 2 in the 9th inning of that one?
2 in the 9th inning, 1 in the 17-0 loss, and then 1 in the first game. So, there you go. 1 in every game.
We're going to have some difficult conversations when this season finally is over. Maybe it's tomorrow about this pitching staff and what needs to be done about that. But technically speaking, you still have at least one more opportunity to win the Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union Grand Slam giveaway. Go online to 1075thegame.com. Register if you're not already. $625 up for grabs today if South Carolina can manage to hit a Grand Slam, win or lose. Maybe you could win some money despite the season not being very fun. Yesterday, I talked about this with Wes and Chris, but FanDuel has put out their early lines for the 2025 college football season. South Carolina, a 9.5-point favorite over Virginia Tech for the opening week game out there in Atlanta. And we talked to the Virginia Tech guy the other week. And again, they're still trying to figure themselves out on offense. They're bringing Philip Montgomery. Their defense should probably be good, but I guess I'm not surprised that South Carolina is such a heavy favorite. These numbers are obviously going to change over the course of the next couple months, but he didn't give us a lot of assurance that Virginia Tech was going to have all their T's crossed and their I's dotted as far as offense goes by the time that game rolls around.
Yeah, I mean, Virginia Tech should be all right at best. I don't think anyone is.
Well, they have no choice but to be all right.
Yeah.
Brent Pry's on the hot seat.
Exactly. I don't think the expectations are anywhere near what they were last year of, all right, this is a team that's going to be a dark horse to win the ACC championship this year. They're going to be so good. And they go out there and lose to Vanderbilt week 1. And Vanderbilt became a lot better, but still, that's not a loss that you should be having if you're Virginia Tech with the expectations you had. And obviously, they've kind of come back down to earth in terms of what to expect this year. And in South Carolina's case, it's the opposite. People are expecting this team to be very, very good this year. And I think on the outside, you probably think, okay, this is probably a 9 to 10 win team. I think in the Columbia area, you have people that are going to expect this team to win 10 games. But
sure,
I think between you, I probably have a lot of media people that see this team every week during the year. It's probably more so that 7 to 8 win mark, but this is still going to be a team coming into the year that has a chance to be one of those top teams, and so they'll be ranked probably, and I guess the line does make a lot of sense in that way, but a little surprising because anytime last year, I don't think they were ever this high of a favorite.
And it's also, you take into account that this is a neutral site game, and you can make the argument, okay, South Carolina's probably going to have more fans there than Virginia Tech fans, given the proximity that Mercedes-Benz Stadium is to Columbia as opposed to Blacksburg. But I think it's significant looking at these lines because, when you're the home team, you typically get about a 3-point advantage, right? Because it's a home game, more comfortable and all those kind of things, and you'll be favored in tight matchups because of that. But to get 9.5 on a neutral site game where the spread doesn't really kind of lean one way or the other depending on the venue, I think that is pretty significant to show, at least in the minds of Vegas, FanDuel here, obviously the one putting the lines out, that they think that they are that much farther ahead than what Virginia Tech is. And it's not hard to disagree with that, or it's not hard to agree with that, certainly, because, again, Virginia Tech coming off a disappointing year. It hasn't really been a great tenure under Brent Pye so far in South Carolina. Yeah, they had the dip in 2023, but for the most part has overachieved in the Beamer era so far.
Yeah, they had a great year last year, South Carolina did, and we've talked about this plenty of times ad nauseum at this point, but they've lost a lot. They have brought in a lot, too, to kind of supplement that. If it's anywhere near what it was last year, I think this team's going to have a great year. But again, the expectations should kind of be tempered considering just how much they did lose, especially on defense. Like, if you are able to find your next Demetrius Knight, your next Kyle Kennard, more power to you. That's insane if they're able to do that 2 years in a row. But we'll have to see. And you have to rely on your two big guys, Dylan Stewart, Lenore Sellers. If those guys are leading the way and everyone else just kind of follows suit, it could be a great year.
In that game, 103 days away on Sunday, August 31st. We actually have quite a few compelling matchups in week number 1 this year. Alabama going to Tallahassee to take on Florida State. No surprise, I guess, Alabama, the 11.5-point favorite, as, again, Florida State fell off the face of the earth last year, had a completely disappointing season. You're obviously transitioning to a new quarterback and all those kind of things. I don't see them winning that game, and that is a bad way to start the year for Florida State, as again, Mike Norvell's probably feeling like he's got his back up against the wall.
Yeah, and my question is Florida State going to be as bad as they were last year, though?
You would think not. Like last year seemed almost impossible, right?
You'd hope it's an anomaly. Like, the DJU situation just did not work even before the injury. He was awful.
Yep.
And again, this is a team that 2 years ago was undefeated going into the Orange Bowl.
And they should have been in the playoff, let's be honest.
But that, again, them not getting in, deciding all their players to sit out, it just left losing that game 63-3, the way they did to Georgia, was kind of set the wheels in motion for how the next season was going to go before we even thought it was going to get that bad. And in Alabama's case, they were disappointing last year, and I think to a lot of people's eyes, because, yes, it was year 1 at DeBoer, but you were expecting this team to not lose to Oklahoma on the road and lose some other games along the way that you did, lose to Michigan in the bowl game. So this year, they didn't lose anyone in the portal, as we talked with Charlie Potter from Bama Online a few weeks ago now. That's big for them. They bring a lot of weapons back. And then your quarterback situation, you'll have Ty Simpson starting at quarterback, it seems like, for week 1. If he looks pretty good, maybe different from Jalen Milroe, but if he looks anywhere near the part of a starting quarterback in the SEC, this should be a very good Alabama team to watch.
The one that's really going to kick things off on Saturday, August 30th, likely big noon Saturday, is Ohio State playing host to Texas. Ohio State, the 3.5-point favorite. This is compelling from the standpoint of you have an Ohio State team, obviously loaded with talent, starting a true or a redshirt freshman quarterback in Julian Sayin that's not taking a single snap in his college career. Texas, a team loaded with talent, starting a guy in Arch Manning who hasn't really started against high-caliber competition. I don't know which way this one's going to go. I guess I would lean towards Ohio State because they're playing at home. But technically speaking, Arch Manning is the more veteran quarterback in this matchup, all things considered.
He is, and the hype around Julian Sayin is legit, I think. We'll see if he can translate over to what everyone continues to say about him. But it's going to be, week 1 is going to be, I think, one of those games. And it goes across the board where it's like what the team looks like in week 1 is easily not going to be what it looks like by week 12. Like, there are going to be key differences, but this is such a big game early in the year that it's like if this were played 3-4 years ago, we're talking about, oh man, one of these teams, whoever loses, kind of they have no more margin for error. But in this game, the winner, loser, doesn't really.
You're fine.
You're all right. So.
What might be one of the most compelling quarterback matchups of the entire season. Clemson going to Death Valley, the other Death Valley that is, taking on LSU as a 2.5-point favorite.
Yeah, and this game being right in Clemson's backyard is
it is in Clemson.
Yeah, so it's at Clemson.
You have to ask which Death Valley is the real Death Valley.
The real Death Valley is.
I think it's in Baton Rouge.
I think it's in Baton Rouge too. So we'll see. Going to that environment this year should be fun. But I'm a little surprised that LSU is an underdog, but at the same time, I'm not, because Clemson is also a very good team.
Going back to our conversation with the LSU guy the other week as we wrap up the segment here, this is where I kind of feel like Garrett Nussmeier is just being overlooked in so many ways. He's one of the better quarterbacks in college football this year, and I don't think people are giving him as much credit as they should. Now, again, Clemson's the home team, so they're probably getting the advantage here. But LSU could be a serious team to make the college football playoff this year. Watch out.
Totally. Nussmeier, I think, is definitely underrated, and this is going to be a big matchup for these two teams that have high expectations going into this season.
Now, this is going to be a fun one. I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah, that'll be good.
I appreciate the fact that South Carolina's playing on Sunday because that gives us all day Saturday to watch these compelling games and not have to, worry about where we're at, for South Carolina and stuff. That game will be at 7:30 on ABC that Saturday night, by the way, right up the road in Clemson at their version of Death Valley. So it should be a fun one. We'll come back. We'll wrap up the hour before we let Jack get out of here and head on the road to Clemson. To Hoover. I know, talking about Clemson. Get out to Hoover. Something on your perspective you can give here. Juan Soto did not get a warm welcome in his return to Yankee Stadium the other day. We'll dive into that coming up next. It is The Extra Point. It's our head and Jack Feltry on your Tuesday here on The Game. Welcome back in. Extra Point, Tyler Head. Jack Belcher along with you for a few more minutes where he heads out to Hoover to watch South Carolina baseball in action, taking on Florida in the first round of the SEC tournament coming up today at 5:30. While we are talking about baseball, this story was interesting. New York sports fans are not known to be the kindest at times. They are not always the most warm and inviting at times. So why did Juan Soto think perhaps he was going to get a hero's welcome in his return to Yankee Stadium over the weekend when the Subway Series took place, when the Mets, his new team that paid him a lot of money to be there, decided to take on, or ended up taking on the Yankees?
Well, I don't think he ever necessarily thought he was going to get a warm welcome. I don't think anyone in their right mind knew that this was going to be the way it goes. And he gets booed like crazy. And the argument I've seen out there is that, oh, he was just a Yankee for 1 year and stuff. But I mean, the guy clearly loved it here.
Well, and he was a big part of that Yankee team being successful last year.
Exactly. That home run he hit in Game 5 of the ALCS sent the Yankees to the World Series. So for him the Yankees offered him plenty of money, more money than anyone could ever want. But then he takes the Mets offer,
which was a little bit more.
So that's why you see people getting booed like that when you offer a good amount of money and you accept another offer.
And look, I don't blame him for taking a better deal. It's more money in your pocket, obviously. But you have to know when you're going to return to, even if it was just 1 year, especially in New York, they're not going to treat you very well. And kind of reading this detailed report from NewJersey.com, you could see that it affected him as the weekend went along. He ended up not having a great weekend overall, where he went 1 of 10 at the plate and struck out 3 times, I believe. So not the best weekend overall. And he gets 1 series. It's not the end of the world by any means. But as the weekend went on, you could see that this was wearing on him more and more with the way the crowd was just dogging him the entire time.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was brutal. I mean, Friday you had him, and it was funny because when he was getting booed in his first at bat, he goes up to the plate, he takes his helmet off, and he waves it to the fans, like what you would normally do when you're getting cheered by the fans in your return to your old stadium. But it was when he was getting booed, so I thought that was kind of funny. He was playing around with it, and then when he goes out to right field, fans that loved him last year would serenade him with cheers and stuff last year, and Juan Soto chants. They just turned their back on him, which is very ironic.
It got to the point, apparently, he tried to be the last one out of the dugout when going into the field to prevent the mass booing, I guess, or the mass negative reaction when he'd go out there.
Oh, yeah. And it got to a point where by Sunday, the last game of the series, number one, there were a few things that happened. He did not speak to Aaron Judge all weekend until Sunday, right before the game, and that was probably the only time you saw him smile all weekend long.
Yep.
The other thing was that he was supposed to be mic'd up on Sunday Night Baseball on ESPN.
Right.
At the last minute, apparently, he backed out of it, and that duty was handed over to Brandon Nimmo. And then after the game, he said he was going to come back to meet with the media after going to see some of his family. He never returned. So a tough weekend for Juan Soto.
Yeah, that's rough. And again, the numbers weren't great. And then also some controversy last night with him as he did not run out a ball that bounced off the Green Monster in their game against Boston. So it's been a little bit of a tough couple days for Juan Soto. Obviously, he's still one of the better players in all of baseball, so he's going to be fine. But it is interesting to see how, again, we kind of think about these professional athletes as robots sometimes, but even something like a negative reaction from your former fan base can hurt you and can have an effect over a weekend.
He just looks miserable, and I don't feel bad for him. He's the one that took the bigger deal, and that's on him.
That's
and he's stuck
with it.
He is stuck in Queens for the next 15 years, and meanwhile, the Yankees are doing just fine.
Yeah.
So whatever.
Well, again, I don't want to see him have any success with the Mets, so I'm right there in the same boat with you. That'll do it for the Extra Point. Coming up next, the Gamecock Club Hour with myself and Chris Clark. A lot of NIL and NCAA stuff to get into that have developed over the last 24 hours. Jack, we'll see you tomorrow.
Yep, I'll have a good trip to Hoover. So see you guys. Everyone knows that AAA Heating and Air has the best HVAC replacement options in the Midlands with their guaranteed financing, no payments or interest for 12 months, and a 15-year parts and labor warranty. They're hard to beat when you need a new system. But did you know they also have great deals for repairs? That's right. If your system is broken and you're strapped for cash, AAA Heating and Air can help. They'll get your repairs done with payment options for up to 12 months and no credit check required. So if you're the homeowner, all you need is a valid bank account. That's it. That's all you need. So don't wait. Call AAA Heating and Air today and get your comfort back on track. AAA Heating and Air. Comfort you can trust.
Ten o'clock, welcome back in. Gamecock Club Hour, presented by Krantz Cooling Heating. Tyler Head and Chris Clark along with you. Jack Veltri on the long road to Hoover. He's got a long day ahead of him. He said he normally would have left early on this morning and done like the show over the phone, but decided, you know what, I can come in here for an hour, bounce at 10 o'clock, and you do gain an hour by going west. Get to the Hoover Met at about 2:15 instead.
Work ethic.
Yes.
You know,
he works hard, man.
That's what Jack does. We could all learn from him, or I could.
Now, were you or Chris ever like on the road?
Me or
covering
Wes.
Stuff or you and Wes, sorry. On the road.
I'm used to it.
On the road as much as like Jack or Colin or anybody like that?
No.
You never on the beat for all the sports?
No. Wes, earlier in his illustrious career, I think did, or I don't think, I know, did more road trips before we worked together.
Yeah, and you guys still do a lot of stuff like recruiting-wise, going to camps and announcements and all that kind of stuff. So you put some miles on it, but I think Jack is the champion at Gamecock Central right now in terms of miles driven on the year.
He's the clear winner. He probably still has some work to do to catch up with Colin, but since Colin retired from the game.
That's true.
And is now somewhere, I hope Colin's listening, in a cushy office somewhere or something like that.
He's got a very comfortable job across the street, essentially.
Corner office with a view.
Office. That doesn't have to leave the city too much. I'll say that much.
That's right. Yeah, Jack definitely puts in the work, and we appreciate what he does. So he'll be covering all the action for Gamecock Central, and see how it goes out there.
He might be back in Columbia tomorrow afternoon if things go the way they think they're going to go. And we'll get into some baseball stuff coming up a little bit later. I don't know about you, but I love when different things I'm interested in kind of cross over with each other that otherwise don't really have a correlation. I was watching Monday Night Raw last night. They were up the road in Greenville at Bond Scores, and in the middle of the show during one of the matches, I see a sign that made me laugh. Now, are you familiar with the word yeet? Are you familiar with the usage of this word? You can yeet something out of the way.
Yeah, believe it or not, doesn't it? It means throw, right?
Yes, essentially to chuck, throw, get something out of the way very, very quickly. During Monday Night Raw, yeet is an expression of excitement, approval, surprise, or energy, often used in conjunction with a physical action like throwing or discarding of something. Okay. I saw a sign in the middle of the show that said Lenora Sellers yeets Clemson.
Okay. I mean, I'm glad. So, I'm glad you gave the, is that from Urban Dictionary or
yes, that is
Webster?
Well, actually, it's in Webster now. Believe it or not.
Wow. Okay.
So it's
come a long way.
It started off in Urban Dictionary, but now has a proper definition in the actual dictionary.
Was the sign was like prominent on the broadcast?
It was
that
like
you could see.
The person was sitting, and you've been to wrestling events. You have the hard camera that focuses on the ring, and they were on the other side of that. And I only saw it one time after one of the women's matches, and puts it up, says Lenore Sellers yeets Clemson, and that was the last time I saw it. I think for the rest of the night, but they got on TV, so the rivalry knows no bounds. Yep. You're now crossing over to a completely different element of sports and entertainment, but I appreciate that. So, if you had that sign, thank you.
Yes, points for doing that.
Yes.
And a lot of Gamecocks in Greenville actually, but you get up to Greenville, you're even closer to Clemson.
Oh, you're right there.
So you're running the risk, of a ringside attack or something like that. But that's funny. Actually, if you had not said that definition, I would have been like, does that even make sense? I'm 38 years old. Yeet is not really part of my vocabulary than hearing it from
younger children. So
yeah,
you hear these terms and phrases, I'm sure.
They have some weird words, like when we were growing up, you had, some things that I'm sure were kind of silly, but nowadays, I'm like, what are you guys even talking about?
What was and again, about a 10-year age gap between the two of us, what was a word coming up with y'all that's safe for radio, of course, that was like the cool thing to say, but now you look back on it and say, we really said that? That sounds really dumb.
I don't know if I can even think of it because they made sense to me at the time, and even now they make sense. Like we would just call something, we didn't use, I think like rad was like older than me, so something was, we would just say regular words like awesome or, whatever. And nowadays it's like skibbity or what, I'm like, what does this word even mean?
So I'm familiar with skibbity just from perusing online. There's a game now that I saw it at Five Below. It's called like Skibbity Toilet. And it's like an actual
familiar with that phrase.
Game that you play. I don't know how you play it, but it's called Skibbity Toilet. And that word is infiltrated, I guess, Hasbro at this point to where they're making games about it.
the sad thing is you told me about that game, and my immediate thought was not how dumb it was. It's like, I wonder if I can go grab that and see if the kids will enjoy. I shouldn't encourage that.
No,
that doesn't.
Yeah, $5 at Five Below if you want to. If you think your kids would enjoy
If you're
that.
looking for a gift idea.
For a gift idea. I came up in the swag era in high school.
All right, yeah, that was past my time. Yeah, newer.
Yeah, looking back on that, I'm like, man, what were we doing?
Yeah, there's a lot of that. I mean, definitely some cringe things. I just feel like the words now, they like don't make sense.
Yeah, it's just like it's a compilation of letters, right? Like you're not even trying. Like skibbity, what does that mean? Like you're not even trying to.
I think it
make an actual word.
And I actually it apparently originated from some like meme online, and then I think it just
typically do.
It somehow bled over into young person culture and whatever. But.
Do you remember? I want to say it was right before the season started last year when Vendrevious Jacobs became like a meme with South Carolina Twitter randomly. I didn't. Maybe I knew it at the time, but I forgot the reasoning behind why that happened. But he just all of a sudden blew up and was
the guy.
The guy.
I love a good meme too.
Oh, I do too.
I'm not. Yeah.
It's 95% of the reason I'm still on Twitter for memes.
Yes, I'm just here for the memes.
But the Dre Jacobs thing, and obviously he didn't end up doing a whole lot last year, dealing with injuries and all that kind of stuff. But for a moment, he was talk of Gamecock athletics in general for meme purposes, which I just found funny.
Yeah. Well, and now, he's trying to put his stamp. He wants to be known for. We'd have, missed opportunity by me. We had him on this show not too long ago, and I didn't ask him if he had seen the memes, so we'll have to get him back in.
Yeah. And
kind of deconstruct that a little bit and see what he thought. But now he's trying to, Dre's trying to be known this year for catching footballs, which spring game's any indication, he might be on his way to doing that. He had a really nice spring game and going into year two.
And we know the wide receiver room, it's not as, I'd say, wide open as it was a year ago, but there's still a lot of opportunity there. Now, we assume that, Mazio Bennett, after a strong first year, Nick Harbor, obviously coming on strong at the end of last season, they're going to be kind of among your top two guys in that room, more likely than not. But you look at, option 3, option 4, who's that going to be? And Dre Jacobs certainly one of those guys in the running for that, in addition to some very talented, young freshmen coming in as well.
Well, you love the competition there. I mean, and I don't know. We started out talking about skibbity and things like that. Now we're talking about receivers, which is great. That's what we should be talking about.
Well, everything eventually leads to sports at some point.
Eventually. And, the competition in that room I'm fascinated by because it was already competitive this spring. And now, I wrote about this last night a little bit on Gamecock Central. Now you add in Murph. You got Donovan Murph coming in, who, Tyler, I thought was the most ready-to-play guy out of those 6 receivers that they signed. And you got to see what it looks like once he gets to campus. The other 5 guys have had the benefit of they have gone through winter workouts. They went through spring ball. They'll have, from that standpoint, a mental and physical jump. But, a few things to keep in mind about Murph. Number one, not that I'm like the arbiter of this, but I did feel like he was probably the most ready to play. You keep in mind that he's, graduating early, right? He reclassified.
Yep.
So he's still a year younger, but even then you felt like, man, this guy's kind of advanced. He's probably going to have a really good shot. But he's coming in later. I think a couple things that'll help him. He's been around the program because of his local proximity, going to Irmo, living in the Midlands. He's been able to be around the team as much as possible without being on the team, if that makes sense. He's been able to go out to practice and go visit all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's no substitute for, being in pads and on the field as much as possible. That helps you. But he has been around some. If he was from, Atlanta or something, he's probably not hanging out quite as much around the program throughout winter and spring. And so that's helped him out. Plus, he's, he is, I think, advanced, and he is an alpha-type mentality. So I think that is really going to help him when he gets here. He's made of the right stuff. And so I think a lot of freshmen, they kind of hit that wall. And maybe even some of the guys that are coming in this class might ultimately hit that freshman wall, even if they had good springs. We'll have to see. But Murph, his mentality and the way he prepares and how he thinks, his confidence, I think that'll serve him well when he gets here. And what that means is, the competition, not only for starting spots, but just kind of getting into that top 6, earning some playing time is going to be significant.
And I forgot about Jared Brown as well. Obviously, Jared Brown going to factor in this wide receiver room as well. And, there's 4 of your more experienced guys that have obviously been here at least for one season already with South Carolina. So when you talk about these younger guys, talk about Donovan Murphy, talk about Brian Rowe, talk about Lex Cyrus, Malik Clark, if they do find their way onto the field at some point this year, barring injury from some of those guys ahead of them, of course, it's because they would have earned it, not because, well, hey, we don't really have any other options. Get out there, kid, and see what happens. There is a lot of competition in that room, like you said, and it's going to be interesting to see how many of these guys can break through. And again, they're not all going to get the opportunity to play. Just that's not how numbers work in a wide receiver room, but seeing if a couple of them could be solid rotation pieces with that wide receiving core.
Well, and if you've heard Shane Beamer talk, and he talked about this at times during the Welcome Home Tour, you would like ideally not to play the same 3 guys all the time. You want to keep guys fresh and be able to have more of a rotation, maybe than you've had in the past, and it's entirely possible they may have that this season. When you're kind of looking at, when you're trying to create an outlook in this room in terms of just the starters or the guys that just generally may play the most, I do think it's natural to start with JB, Mazio, Nick, because they've been around, they've done it the most, they have the most experience. But I think we know that the freshmen have pushed them, and we know that the presence of the older guys, I think all of whom took a leap of some sort this spring, I think all of those guys, Mazio, JB, Nick, had good springs. That has signaled to the freshmen that, yeah, we got an opportunity to play, but we're going to have to go potentially take it from the older guys too. So that's created a really good tension. I don't mean that in a negative way in this room where competition is just a better word.
Sure.
It's created a lot of that. So, still a lot to figure out, but you're right. You're not going to, okay, which 10 guys are playing? That 10 guys may play, but not significant snaps. You may look up and down the snap count at the end of the year and say, hey, these 10 guys all got some snaps. But the top of that, it's going to be more top heavy, and that's what you're trying to find as you progress through summer and into preseason in August.
And we'll finally see these guys on the field 103 days from now. It's getting closer. Little by little. We're getting there. We're almost at 100 days.
Yep.
Once you get to 100 days, it feels like then, okay, now we're on the right track, and it'll be here before we know it. In those 103 days until college football begins, a lot has to be decided in the future of college sports in general. And boy, last night we got some interesting news in what could be the future of all of college sports, of course, including college football. We'll dive into what the new structure and potentially getting booted out of conferences might end up looking like. With that coming up next, it is the Gamecock Club Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. Tyler and Chris along with you on your Tuesday here on The Game.
When we talked to the guys over at Integrated Media, we found out they hear a few common things from their new customers. Things like, hey, I didn't know that Integrated Media sells TVs at the same price as the big box stores. That's right. They sell, deliver, and install TVs without you having to go into a store or browse the thousands of options online. They also install camera and alarm systems. Yep, they do that. Video doorbells, video floodlights, even monitored alarm systems to keep your family and your home safe. If your Wi-Fi always goes out, if it's slow, yes, they can fix that too, especially in today's world of streaming apps like YouTube TV, ESPN Plus, and even the e-learning days for the kids. You need to make sure your Wi-Fi signal is strong throughout your home. Integrated Media is a one-stop shop for all your tech needs. Don't waste your time in a store or get confused at all the thousands of options on the internet. Just give them a call, 803-948-8327, integratedmediainc.com.
Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Club Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. Tyler and Chris Clark with you on your Tuesday. Appreciate everybody checking us out on the Game TV. Sponsored by Shepherd's Glass and powered by our friends over at Integrated Media. We are still awaiting the final decision in the House versus NCAA settlement case, which could come down this week. Again, about a month and a half ago, was supposed to be the final hearing. Judge sent them back to work on the language of a couple different things, specifically involving the
roster
limits, walk-ons, and all that kind of stuff. And they theoretically have gone back, fixed those things, and we'll see if they get a final approval later on this week. But as you would expect, the powers that be in college football are already preparing for things to be in place for the new reality of college sports. And one thing or a couple things came out yesterday, and we'll try and get to all of them over the course of the hour, but I kind of want to focus on this first thing here, that the conferences, I'm trying to find the best way to describe this, are basically drafting up provisions to lock every school in to this new college sports commission where they can, as we've seen many schools do and conferences do over the years, sue their way out of things when it comes to this new reality of college football at the end of the day. They're trying to get all these schools to sign on to it even before the settlement gets done. And if you don't do that, you risk potentially getting kicked out of your own conference.
Pretty extreme, huh?
Did I sum that up well enough? There's a lot of moving pieces to this.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing about it. It is best to try to give as broad of an overview as possible and kind of sum it up because there are so many moving parts to this thing. I mean, it seems like almost every day there's another layer coming out about this to where it's hard to keep up. And to the extent that you have a handle on it here on Tuesday, by Wednesday you might not. You might be behind. And so you almost have to kind of read and keep up with it daily. But, yeah, the College Sports Commission is going to be basically, in theory, or proposed, will be over not only the NIL Go software that Deloitte, who, by the way, is also contracted separately by schools for various items, putting in place this software to run the NIL clearinghouse, plus things like enforcement. Been a very shadowy group so far, which is an interesting strategy, given that being shadowy and sketchy is kind of how we got here.
Sure. And the NCAA wouldn't go away, by the way. They'd still exist for eligibility and all that kind of stuff. But their power to preside over punishments would be gone, and this new College Sports Commission would handle that essentially.
They would handle that. And so there's a lot of things at play here. So you've got this, I used the word tension earlier. It's probably a better usage of it here where, a lot of administrators, coaches, certainly the NCAA has wanted this House settlement to A, settle, and B, kind of become the standard or the law of the land. But if you really dive into it, you quickly find out that the House settlement doesn't really solve much.
And you wrote about this the other day.
Yeah, it is not a catch-all. It's not the magic bullet. The reason why is because you can go outside of the structure of, okay, it's a revenue-sharing mechanism.
Yep.
The College Sports Commission can exist. Yeah, the clearinghouse can exist. But it seems like one of the reasons that we are trying to get both sides to come together, we would like both sides to come together, is actually not through a settlement or is actually not in court. The fact that this is playing out in court really just means that that's going to continue. Like that ball is continuing to roll down the court. Mac Rhodes, who's the AD at Baylor, spoke about this, and he's like, if we're not all going to sign off on the settlement and we're not all going to go, and everybody's just going to go over the cap by getting NIL collective money, what's even the point? And, that's actually a good point. The issue is the schools and the athletic departments in college that are looking around going, actually, we just want to win. We're going to do what it takes. They're not going to just abide by the terms of this settlement. And so there's a great example of that this week, or actually maybe last week over the weekend. It was uncovered. Tennessee quietly almost signed a state law, another one.
The state of Tennessee.
The state of Tennessee.
Yes.
Good clarification.
Yes.
They signed a state law that basically says, okay, the House settlement, if that settles, yeah, we don't really have to do that. Like, we can do what we want still. It's our state law. So we don't have to abide by your revenue share. We don't have to abide by other things that the House case may put in unless it's part of a valid court order or a federal bill, which they've been, quote unquote, working on, but is not close, according to everybody you talk to, or something of that nature, right? So we already have, okay, House settlement. We already have Tennessee and other states, by the way, that have states that directly conflict with what the settlement's going to be.
Yep.
Now, predictably, the NCAA does not like that. And the power conferences, who are kind of in lockstep with the NCAA, don't want that either. And so now what they're trying to do is to draft this legislation, or not legislation, a document.
Agreement. Yeah.
Yes. Agreement's a good word. That basically says y'all are going to abide by the House settlement terms. Mm-hmm. This is how things are going to be. Now, the problem is, aside from just schools just maybe not wanting to do that, take Tennessee as an example. The state of Tennessee, the NCAA, or the SEC in this case, is asking them potentially to sign a document that conflicts with their state law.
Yes.
What do you do?
Yeah, and this is where it gets interesting. This is all, Ross Dellinger, by the way, is on top of all of this, by the way. And you can read all of his stuff on yahoosports.com. But essentially, if you don't agree to this, then you could risk getting bumped out of your conference and, in his words, being blackballed from playing anybody else. So you're essentially going to be tumbled down to the group of five if you don't sign this agreement to stay in line with everybody and not go after the College Sports Commission in court.
Jay Billis made a great point to Pete Nakos of On3. Pete just put out a story on this if you want to check it out on on3.com. You know, Jay makes a good point. Now, Jay Billis has long time been an advocate for athletes. We know this for years, before NIL. And they talked this week, and he pointed out anything that has the word commission in it hasn't worked. You know, we've had the Knight Commission, we've had the Rice Commission. Jay Billis, for his part, his opinion, he's not a big fan of the forthcoming presidential commission, and we're not going to go, into politics or whatever on this program, certainly, but his point, I don't think has anything to do with like who's president or which party's in power. Just as a commission, and it just hasn't worked. And he made the point, we need bargaining. And I fail to see, it seems like everybody is trying to take the most difficult path possible. The NCAA's desire is that, just like they did with athletes for years, is that the schools will just all fall in line.
Mm-hmm.
Some schools actually would, in my opinion. But a lot of schools, I think Tennessee is a good example, being in the state of Tennessee. You look at Tennessee, Memphis, Vanderbilt, any other, basically the P4 schools are the ones that this is going to apply to the most, just because of the dollars coming in and out.
Yep.
They don't really want to abide by it. And so where does that leave you? And are you really going to take the extreme of example? I mean, imagine if the SEC, they didn't sign the document, we're kicking out the Tennessee Volunteers. I don't know about that.
Yeah, it seems a lot easier said than done, but again, it seems like, and again, all the power conferences are together on this. They're trying to put their foot down. How effective can that be? We don't know, but again, like we said, a lot of moving parts to this. And one thing I want to get to on the other side is an interesting angle of this College Sports Commission that's supposed to go into effect once the House settlement is agreed upon, is probably the closest thing to a commissioner in college sports that we've ever had, though not quite in the same name. And we'll get into that coming up next. It is the Gamecock Club Hour presented by Krantz Schooling and Heating. Tyler Hagen, Chris Clark on your Tuesday on the Game.
Do you have any roofing needs? If so, I'm going to point you over to our guys, Joe Reeder and Max Sawyer at Classic Roofing. ClassicRoofingSC.com. Whether it's your home or a business, commercial, residential roofing, inspections, installations, replacements, repairs, anything basically that has to do with your roof, our guys over at Classic Roofing can help you. Again, ClassicRoofingSC.com. You can get a free estimate there. You can also visualize what your new roof may look like if indeed you need a new roof. And if you're not sure, again, give them a call. Go to the website, ClassicRoofingSC.com, or 803-590-7870. Years of experience, reliable GAF certified roofers with families that live right here in the Midlands. You can build your new roof online. Solutions, no nonsense, no dishonesty, no gimmicks, no headaches, and no problems. They also give back to the military. ClassicRoofingSC.com, 590-7870.
Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Club Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. It's our head Chris Clark with you on your Tuesday, examining the future of college sports that could hit the ground running here in just a matter of days with the House versus NCAA settlement hopefully getting resolved sometime this week. Yeah, and Chris, you know, we've followed college sports for a very long time, and there's always been this perception like, hey, like every other professional sport, why isn't there a commissioner? Why isn't there one presiding figurehead that is the go-to person to get answers about whatever's going on in the league, the conferences, all those kind of things? And I feel like the calls for that have not ever been louder than they've been in the past couple of years with NIL running rampant and all the changes in college sports and all those kind of things, because the NCAA has always been an entity. Yes, Mark Emmert was somebody that would come out and talk about things, but he was never kind of looked at in a commissioner type of role. It was the NCAA as a whole, this nameless, faceless type of organization. Well, in what, again, we hope is the final, decision on the House settlement case sometime this week, we are looking at what might be the closest thing we've ever had to a college sports commissioner in form of the CEO of the College Sports Commission. That would be one figurehead entity that would kind of speak for the commission as a whole when it comes to doling out punishments and sanctions and those kind of things in the future in this new era of revenue sharing in college sports.
Is this a good idea?
On paper, it seems like one, but I'm sure there's an unintended consequence I'm not thinking about right now.
Well, my question is, there's actually more than one question in there. My first is, probably three, as I continue to work through it in my head, as you can tell in real time.
And again, this all has come out in the past 24 to 18 hours, so it's not something we've had a lot of time to really process.
I think, number one, will the College Sports Commission, hereby known as the CSC on the show, Tyler.
Yes.
Officially.
A little easier to say.
Bank that. Does the CSC have any teeth? We don't know. Can it? If it does, then it would be great to have a strong leader.
Sure.
So is that leader, the CEO, is the CEO actually empowered with however they structure this organization to then drive change and implement initiatives that make sense? And then third, the most important thing is, does the commission have any teeth?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because there are a lot of organizations that just exist just to kind of exist. They don't really do much. They sound important, but they aren't, or they don't have teeth. So that's the most important part, actually. But if you get to the point where it does have some teeth and it can do some things, who is it? That's critical.
Yes.
I look right now, and I don't know Charlie Baker, who's the president of the NCAA. I don't know him. He might be a great guy. And his job is to protect the interests of the NCAA. So I get it. I understand there's a bias there, and I have some natural biases against that, honestly. But when he goes on and says things, he was quoted in the last 24 hours, I think it was, as saying, I don't believe anything that's said in the NIL space. There's nothing to verify. I mean, it's just not true. That's just one of those lines people say.
Yeah.
It's all lies. There's nothing. There's actually ways to find out what's going on talking to people.
Sure. Are there lies out there? Sure.
Oh, 100%. There's lies about everything.
Yeah.
The NCAA lies, actually, a lot, whether intentionally or not. But, and actually that's one. We don't have any way, there's no way to verify anything. And Mitt Winter, the prominent NIL attorney, pointed out, there's ways. Like, talk to people, go talk to collective operators, go talk to NIL attorneys, maybe talk to some players. How about that idea? Figure out what the problems are, what's good, what's bad, what's real, what's not. It's not going to be perfect. There's obviously still going to be lies. But there are ways. And the question I pose for Charlie Baker, does he believe the numbers that Deloitte gave to the ACC the other day? 70% of NIL deals wouldn't have been cleared by the clearinghouse. How do you know that? You don't have the data from the past 4 years. So that's around the point I'm trying to make is that, your leader has to be empowered, and then it has to be a good person. And, not a morally good, but I just mean a person who's good for the job, who's actually understands things and is going to drive change.
And that's where this is interesting, because the reporting from guys like Ross Dellinger is that this would be an outside hire. And again, this person would be selected by the power conferences who basically make up this new college sports commission. And the reporting is that it'd be somebody from outside the realm of college sports. I don't know if that's the best option necessarily. Now, again, you can say, oh, well, Nick Saban would be the perfect commissioner. Yeah, over college football, maybe, but not maybe over college sports as a whole. But personally, I feel like somebody that at least understands the landscape of what they're dealing with by being on the inside would probably be a better option than somebody, I don't know, that was a CEO of a Fortune 500 company or something like that, which seems like the direction they would probably end up going.
Yeah, you don't want, my view is you don't want a yes man. And so by that, you don't want an NCAA yes man. I don't think you even want a yes man just for the college athletic side of like administration or coaches, right?
Yeah.
But you do need somebody who understands sports. If you get somebody who, what's the first down, that's not going to work.
Sure.
So you need somebody that has an understanding of it. But, do you need somebody with business acumen? Do you need somebody with maybe a legal background? Because Lord knows there's been plenty of legislation going on here.
Sure.
Maybe so. And is there a person that meets, all of those categories plus more, or has, maybe a little weaker in one area but really strong in some of the other ones? Maybe so. I just think it needs to be the right person. I don't really have any ideas off the top of my head, but I go back to the question of, how much are they going to be able to do? Or is this going to be more of a position where it's a figurehead and somebody's getting paid, a couple $1 million to just kind of say, I'm the commissioner of the CSC and that's it.
And that's where this gets interesting, because let's just look at pro sports in general. Like Roger Goodell is the commissioner of the NFL. He is the person that speaks on everything going on with the NFL. When questions needs to be asked about discipline, rule changes, those kind of things, he's the one that speaks about it. But he's at the mercy of the 32 owners, because 32 owners are the ones that select him as the commissioner, pay his salary, all those kind of things. So he's basically speaking for them. He's the medium that they are speaking through on what's going to happen within the league. And it kind of seems like, because again, the Power Four conferences are the ones making up this commission that are going to select this person to be commissioner. It kind of feels like that would be the same situation here, where he's just kind of representing what the conferences as a whole are trying to make happen here.
Yeah, the NCAA loves to say that. We're just, doing what the schools tell us. And in some cases, that's true.
Sure.
Because you'll go back and look at something the NCAA's done, and you'll see, X amount of, presidents of the universities were on board with this. And you go, okay, it doesn't make sense, but that's what they're on board with. But we also know that the NCAA certainly does things and makes decisions that its member institutions do not agree with.
Right.
I mean, here locally, listen to Shane Beamer's comments recently during the Welcome Home Tour. He's talking about the NCAA's timelines for eligibility. I mean, that's something that people would like to see resolved, yet it hasn't been resolved. So you can't just say we're strictly a puppet for the schools. That doesn't really work that way.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of evidence now, like the Tennessee state law that we referenced in the last segment, that schools are in this era looking to do what they can to remain competitive. The good ones are looking at this, not going, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, NCAA, let's fall in line and do whatever you say. They're looking at it going, okay, if we got to fall in line with that piece, we will. What else can we do to remain competitive? Because if you're in the SEC, the Big Ten, it's hard nowadays.
Yep.
And the newest part of the arms race is what can we do in NIL? How well can we retain? How well can we work the transfer portal? Schools are looking, the smart schools are looking at it saying, how can we get ahead, stay ahead?
Yeah. And again, we hope to get a settlement from the House versus NCAA at some point this week. But again, the groundwork being laid for all these things to go into effect as soon as that does happen to, shape the new world of college sports. Because again, we're about 100 days away from the next sports kicking off, that being football, when the fall rolls around. And again, you got to have a lot of things buttoned up by the time that does end up happening. We'll come back, wrap up the hour, talk about what's happening out at North Carolina, actually on the football field, or at least in the football stadium this time, as opposed to what's going on with Jordan Hudson and Bill Belichick. But as we head into this break, I do have 2 family 4-pack tickets to go see the Columbia Fireflies next Wednesday, not tomorrow, but next Wednesday, as they take on the Fayetteville Woodpeckers out at Segra Park. Callers number 4 and 5 right now win a family 4-pack tickets to next Wednesday's home game for the Fireflies taking on the Woodpeckers over at Segra Park. It is the Gamecock Club Hour presented by Krantz Schooling and Heating. Tyler and Chris with you on your Tuesday here on the game. Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Club Hour. Saturday, Chris Clark along with you here on your Tuesday. Wes Mitchell will jump in with us at top of the 11. We'll get back into some Gamecock baseball as the SEC baseball tournament is underway. Alabama and Missouri squaring off game number 1. Carolina playing sometime around 5:30, depending on how the schedule goes for today. I did see this. We've talked a lot in the past couple of weeks about the ongoing saga of Bill Belichick, his girlfriend, and the University of North Carolina. Well, despite all that, North Carolina has sold out its season ticket allotment for Bill Belichick's first season. So despite all the off-the-field stuff, people are still very excited to see what's going to happen on the field for a Big Bill in his first year in college football.
Big Bill.
Chapel Bill, Big Bill, what are we calling him?
So, Chapel Bill is the official term, as that's what it's going to be on the show.
Did he trademark that?
Jordan Hudson did, I think,
She did,
or
yes,
tried.
true.
Didn't she have like a list of trademarks she tried to do?
Yeah, because she presides over Chapel Bill LLC, which I don't think is an actual thing. I think that's just a made-up company. By the way, did you
not registered?
I don't know if you listened to Pablo Torre Finds Out.
Mm-hmm. I saw what he. Yeah.
Listen to the whole episode as he dives into the Jordan Hudson stuff. Some interesting revelations in there. I'll say that much.
I'll have to. Yeah, I've seen pieces of it, just kind of reported on or talked about on social media. I need to take a deep dive. That would be fascinating. So, what is the verdict? They've said she's not a part of the program.
Right. She's not banned from the building, despite Torres
not banned.
reporting, which, they can just say that and still have her banned, technically.
Will she be on the sideline during the games?
I don't think so. She shouldn't be. She really shouldn't be. No.
Over-under of shots of her, wherever she is. If she's in view publicly, even if she's in, like, a box somewhere, we know from the Taylor Swift saga, they'll find you in the box.
Now we're talking. That's a good buy or sell for week 1 of college football, by the way. They play that Monday night, by the way. They will host TCU on Labor Day night as the cap of week 1 of college football. So literally all eyes will be on that game. I imagine 7:30 kick on ESPN or something along those lines. But, oh, man, I'm going to give a strong estimate of 7 if she's in a visible place in the stadium, which I assume she would be. Hey, there's Jordan Hudson.
It's just, if you're the TCU fans in week 1 are going to be so annoyed because they're barely going to mention TCU. They'll be like, oh, by the way, TCU's here playing in a game.
Yes.
We don't really know anything about them, nor do we care, because it's going to be, before the Jordan Hudson saga, it was Bill Belichick coming to college football. He's got a zillion Super Bowl rings. He did this and that. Tom Brady. This is crazy that he's coming to college football after leaving the league. And there'd be all those storylines. That already would have taken up all the real estate.
Sure.
As it probably should. It's a captivating story. Then you add this. And so there is no doubt all the ESPN and all the TV networks are licking their chops, for sure.
And it's one of those things that, again, he got hired in late December, early January, whenever it was. I don't think the realities are really going to hit me that he's actually in college football until I'm watching this game. Oh, crap, that's Bill Belichick on a sideline wearing a Air Jordan, Carolina blue T-shirt coaching this game. I don't think it's really going to set in until then because, again, all the stuff we've talked about with him has been off-the-field things up to this point. That's when it, again, despite the distractions, it becomes all about the ball at that point.
It does. Now, the fascinating thing, aside from all the other stuff we just talked about, is can he actually do a good job there? And maybe, if you look at UNC's schedule, they have lots of questions as a team.
Sure.
But I do think, I don't profess to know how good or not good TCU is going to be this year, but they do have a schedule that's pretty favorable. They do have to play Clemson. They get them in Chapel Hill. You got to go to Syracuse. You play NC State and Raleigh, but you can look up and down this thing and say, I could see him winning 8 games in year 1 if things break right. I don't know as much about their roster as I do, say, South Carolina, but that's what's going to be interesting because if it goes pretty poorly in year 1 and you attach all the sideshow stuff to it, I think people in Chapel Hill might get worn out by it pretty quickly. If it goes well, it'll become Bill's just being Bill. He's doing his own thing. Who cares?
Yeah, and kind of like, Maneri coming here to South Carolina for baseball, this is not like a long-term play. This is something that's supposed to be successful pretty quickly because, again, Bill Belichick's older than Mac Brown was, who people were concerned about his age when they let him go. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or mutually agree to part ways, however you want to phrase it. So this isn't something that's going to be a long process of rebuilding. Theoretically speaking, he's supposed to hit the ground running and be successful right out of the gate.
Yes, that's what people are going to expect, I think. So it'll be fascinating to watch it play out.
We'll see. All eyes on Chapel Bill this upcoming season. That'll do it for the Gamecock Club Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. What did Palmineri say yesterday previewing the SEC tournament? We'll hit that coming up next here on the game.
As we close out the Gamecock Club Hour here on The Game, it is brought to you on Tuesdays and Thursdays by our friends at Krantz Cooling and Heating. They're the best. Justin Krantz, general manager over there, and his team, the family-owned business that began in 1983 and has carried on until now here in 2025. They're still doing great work serving families and business owners all around the Midlands. So whether you need commercial HVAC services for your business or your home here in the Midlands, you can trust them. I've trusted them. They come out to my home, perform service, installed a mini split in my garage. They did the same for my mom when she needed a company and moved to the Midlands. I said, the only company you need to call is Krantz. KrantzCooling.com, Krantz, cooling with a K, KrantzCooling.com, or give their friendly, helpful team a call, 803-672-3224. Financing options available. Check out the reviews on Google, KrantzCooling.com.
11 o'clock on your Tuesday morning. Welcome in Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler, West, and Chris along with you here on The Game. Happy official SEC tournament opening day for baseball. We're watching right now Alabama and Missouri, bottom of the second, no score. Things getting rolling out there in Hoover so far. South Carolina going to play sometime around 5:30 today. Jack and I were talking. Everything in Hoover always gets thrown off schedule pretty quickly. The weather is actually going to cooperate until like later on this evening, so I don't think it's going to be a weather delay. But as long as one game goes over 3 hours in the first two, then South Carolina and Florida likely not going to be pitching or starting right at 5:30 today.
Tyler, have you done SEC tournament before?
I have not. I've not been there.
Dude, you should put that on your bucket list.
Okay.
Honestly, it's a pretty good, just especially if you like baseball. Obviously, if you're covering a team that's any good, their big thing is they have ice cream in the press box.
Okay.
So I mean, you will just sit there because you'll be there
all day,
and then it rains inevitably. I mean, I was there. I think it might have been 2010.
Mm-hmm.
South Carolina was 2-Q, but then they were there. One of those years might have been 2009. Might have been all of them, honestly.
Okay.
The games went to like 2 a.m.
Yeah. Oh, there's inevitably one game that's going to last well past midnight at some point.
You're just there, and it's one of those things where at first you're kind of annoyed, but then you're like, all right, well now this is a memory. Like, let's just see how crazy this thing can get.
Sure.
And but you're sitting there, you're just hyped up on like ice cream sandwiches, and so it's like they have all these different, like the old school just ice cream sandwich, but then they have all types of other. It's not like soft serve back there; it's all ice cream bars.
Okay, what's your go-to?
Well, I'll go classic.
Just classic. Okay.
Yeah, and so but then they serve up. At least they did. This is back when I covered baseball. They will serve up like something for dinner from like one of the local places, and they also Dr. Pepper everywhere. It's like an SEC thing.
Sure.
But honestly, it is one of the best, like in terms of like level of play in front of you, experience for media, seeing a bunch of guys that are, if you fast forward 5 years from now, some of them are going to be playing in Major League Baseball. Very, very good experience.
So Jack's not going to be miserable even if Carolina's getting bounced into one and done and he's driving back here tomorrow is what you're telling me.
I mean, I think Jack's probably hardened to...
True.
He's grizzled.
Yes.
Did you... How many...
Chris, you're like way down there today.
Oh,
yeah, we got a little...
technical malfunctions.
Yeah, we had a technical malfunction. I was in your spot, and then I moved so you could have your spot.
Oh, thank you.
He kept it warm for you.
Yeah, I did. So you mentioned that, like, misery, like, how prevalent was the classic sports writer complaint about covering sports since all the games went long? You have some complaints mixed in there?
With weather complaints mixed in as well.
Oh man.
The double
whammy for Wes.
Wow. Now that I think about it, why was I not miserable? I was probably miserable from all the misery around me.
Yes. But you had ice cream. So that's
true.
That offsets it.
You're in this vicious cycle of ice cream high, crash. We'll get another ice cream sandwich.
And then you get annoyed with the sports reporters complaining about covering sports being their job, and you need an ice cream to cope with it.
Yep.
So you just keep going.
That's fair.
Anyway, they are going to play baseball too.
They are, yes. Again, Carolina sometime around 5:30, depending on how long the first couple games take. And, of course, we know that if they want to continue playing baseball this year, they're going to have to run the table and win the entire thing and, play for the championship. Coming up on Sunday, Coach Maneri yesterday talking to the media, talked about the approach going into this tournament, knowing that it's win or nothing for his team.
I haven't been in that situation a lot. When I coached at Notre Dame, there was never any guarantee that you would get an at-large bid just because it was the Big East Conference and you didn't know how many bids would come besides the automatic qualifier who won the tournament. So I have a little experience with it there, and a couple of times at LSU maybe we were a little bit on the bubble type of thing. But there's only one way to take it, especially in a single elimination tournament. You just got to do it one game at a time. So I've explained to the players, look, if we can beat Florida on Tuesday, we'll play Ole Miss on Wednesday. And if we can beat Ole Miss on Wednesday, we have a day off on Thursday and kind of regroup a little bit. And then you got a weekend series. You got to win 3 in a row. So obviously that's a daunting task if you think, we got to win 5 games in a row, and you just start out that way. But, you just got to take it one game at a time. I've always enjoyed this tournament. I just... maybe it's because we had a lot of success in it or whatever, but I just always enjoyed it. The police escorts to the field and the big crowds and the people tailgating, all the different teams there, and obviously the competition is outstanding. The SEC does everything the right way. They give gifts to the players, and it's just really a cool tournament. And it's a lot better, obviously, when you're in the NCAA tournament, or that you're going to be a host, or you're going to be a national seed. It takes a lot of pressure off you, but it still doesn't change the fact that it's at a great venue and all the other ancillary things. So, I want our players to go there and just let it rip, and feel like, hey, if we're gonna, if this is it for us, then let's at least go leave it all out on the field and do the very best that we can.
And while I don't think any of us think that they're going to go on this crazy run the next couple of days and win the whole thing and make the NCAA tournament that way, there is something to be said about a team that has everything to gain and nothing to lose, that can truly just throw the kitchen sink at it, while some of these other teams are kind of worried about their resume to a degree and where their position is, in the NCAA tournament and all that kind of stuff. So we'll see what happens. Again, whatever you do this week prolongs your season by maybe a couple more days, but you are facing a Florida team that did outscore you 39-8 a couple weeks ago. So an uphill battle to start things off later on this afternoon.
Yeah, and I think what he just sort of referenced there, though, is the way you have to approach it. If you start looking at it like, hey, we got to win all these games in a row, no margin for error, can't lose any of them, it's just impossible. You do have to look at it like, win today, and then we'll think about tomorrow. And, I know that's a cliche, but it's 100% true. Florida rolls in. You would have hoped. I think a lot of times you see sometimes the lesser teams, or the teams, I should say, that just have had lesser records, will make a run in these things because maybe one of the other teams says, hey, we're gonna hold that ace pitcher a day or two. And the way it used to be, it's been in all these different structures where you kind of had the single limb, but then if you went far enough, it goes double limb, then it goes single limb. Very hard, very confusing, very hard to follow. But there are different ways different teams would use their pitchers. Well, in this case, Florida, they're actually, after starting, 0-7, I think?
Yep.
Much like the Braves. They are now making a run, and they need to win and make a little run because they could actually host a regional at this point. So they go from probably fire O'Sullivan on the Twitter's verse, and then now all of a sudden are sitting there with a chance to host a regional. So they have something to play for, is what I'm saying. So it's not one of those things where maybe you walk into a situation where the opponent not takes it easy, but just isn't quite as motivated to try to beat you.
Well, and they've won their last 6 SEC series. Now, 2 of those were against South Carolina and Missouri.
Mm-hmm.
Missouri only has 3 conference wins, which sensibly came against Texas A&M.
We'll get
that makes total sense.
We're going to get to A&M in a minute.
But,
don't worry.
They also, in that same span, they beat an Arkansas team that I think at the time was a top 5 team.
Yep.
They beat Texas in a series, who at the time was, I think, number 1. And they beat out a ranked Alabama team. So, 3 of those series wins were against ranked conference opponents. And, we know in this conference, anybody can be a tough out on any given day. So, yeah, your draw is not great here. And you've seen this Florida team, as you guys have both laid out. The results were not good at all in that series. But you got to take it one game at a time, see what you can do, see if you can chip away at that 5-game stretch by, going and winning one of them.
And unfortunately, this tournament, and Wes, you've been there yourself to see it, has not been the kindest to South Carolina, even in some of the better years. It's not one that they typically make super deep runs into. And again, this is one of those instances where that's your only choice right now is to go in there, win all 5 of these games over the course of the next handful of days and try and get the NCAA tournament that way. Though, again, see, a lot easier said than done.
Yeah, and I always wonder, it's kind of one of those things where people are like, oh, well, maybe they don't care about the SEC tournament. And then the next year, it'd be like, well, hey, we've really struggled in the SEC tournament. We care. Promise you we care.
Yep.
And then we're going to try to make a run this year, and then you don't. And then it's got, those, the 2010 team, the one that was, the one that breaks through and wins the national championship, lost both games and came home. And then as the story goes, they had to go back to spring training, basically. Like, they were put through the ringer in those practices following that. And, kind of got back to basics, I think. And, I think you look at the way things worked out for that team, it was maybe actually best that they got back home and got back to fundamentals and obviously made what ended up being a historic run. But I think it's hard to put into context. It's hard to really explain why some teams do well there and some teams don't. Certainly, Maneri, his teams have done well there. Now, LSU, just for whatever reason, has always been a team, I would almost say regardless of coach, that has made runs at this thing. And, even in years when they didn't have to, when they didn't need a run, they've still been able to make a run at this thing. So it is kind of fascinating, the teams that have done well and the ones that haven't.
Pregame coverage starting at 5:15 right here on the Game for South Carolina and Florida at the SEC tournament out in Hoover. First pitch scheduled for 5:30, but depending on how long the first 2 games take, could be a little bit later after that. Weather does look okay for that South Carolina game. Storms rolling in a little bit later on in the day. Hopefully does not affect that game for Carolina tonight. And again, if they win today, they will advance to the second round coming up tomorrow. Chris mentioned Texas A&M a moment ago. I don't know if you guys have looked at the whole scope of the year that Texas A&M has had sports-wise, but they're not a good place right now. I don't know, South Carolina, it's not perfect, especially when you talk about baseball and men's basketball, but at least we ain't Texas A&M. We'll dive into the tumultuous year they've had out in College Station coming up next. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler, West, and Chris on your Tuesday on the Game.
All right, shout out to our friends over there at Firehouse Subs. Almost lunchtime. Maybe it is lunchtime for you. Hit up our friends at Firehouse Subs to get today. FirehouseSubs.com, Firehouse Subs app. You want to try something new? Let me tell you, you're going to have to try it soon because it will not be around forever. The Zesty Garlic Hook and Ladder and the Spicy Dill Hook and Ladder, those 2 new specialty subs from our friends over at Hot Ones. Of course, Zesty Garlic, like we've been telling you, it features the classic hot sauce, a garlic Fresno sauce that is got a little spice to it, but is mostly mild and just kind of brings you that flavor. Now, if you like something hot, super hot, the Last Dab Reaper sauce is on this Spicy Dill Hook and Ladder. The pickle has been soaked in the sauce, and honestly, probably one of the hotter subs you're going to find out there. So try either one today. Try it soon because you're running out of time. Or just get your favorites right now, FirehouseSubs.com or the Firehouse Subs app.
Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West and Chris on your Tuesday here on the game. Chris and I, we ran through all the stuff with the changes to college sports and revenue sharing and NIL and all that kind of stuff in the last hour, and we'll see how the ball continues to roll and all that with the potential House settlement coming on hopefully later on this week. But I think there's a perception out there in today's world of college sports that the more money you have, the better off you are as an athletic association as a whole. That will lead to more success on the field, right? You think that's fair that most people will probably think that?
For the most part, you have more resources, you have a better chance.
And when you look at a school like Texas A&M, most people kind of view them as one of the schools, from an all-sport standpoint that probably has more money than the average school when it comes to being able to spend and have those resources to help you be successful. Is that also fair to say?
Yeah, I feel like you're setting us up for an argument.
We're being cross-examined.
Yeah.
I definitely
Leading
am.
question.
Because I feel like Texas A&M has had one of the worst sports years of any school in quite a while. Let me run through what's happened with their major sports programs. This past Sunday, their number one seeded softball team was eliminated by Liberty in the College Station Regional.
Did y'all watch that, by the way?
Crazy game.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Insane.
Two crazy games.
Games. So obviously they're not going any further as the number one seed going into the tournament. Their baseball team played for a national championship last year. Jim Schlossnagel leaves immediately after that, goes to Texas. They still go into the season as the number one team in the preseason poll. They right now are on the outside looking in of the NCAA tournament. They got to win a couple games in Hoover this week to even get themselves into the field. Men's basketball made the second round to get bounced by Michigan. Buzz Williams leaves to take the Maryland job. Women's basketball misses the tournament completely. Football, remember, they were a 7-1 team, I think, coming into, or a 6-1 team coming into Columbia, 10th in the nation. Carolina beats them, storm the field, crazy game. They lose 4 out of their last 5 games the end of last year, including the rebirth of the Texas rivalry, at home no less. And they still had to pay Jimbo Fisher $7.2 million to not be their coach last year. That's a pretty bad year for one athletic program, I would say. With a lot of teams having very high expectations going in, they've obviously failed to live up to.
Well, and have y'all seen? I'm hoping that it's accurate, but have y'all seen the graphic floating around of basically severance pay?
Yeah, and they're like up here, and everybody else is down here.
Yeah, and you know what? There's a South Carolina takeaway to that too.
Yep.
There has been a perception. And I'll admit, I kind of had this perception as well. There's been a perception of, South Carolina, all these terrible contracts, paying all these buyouts. And, yet, sometimes stats can be misleading because, hey, maybe you paid a huge buyout the year before that was in the window of this graphic. But the fact of the matter is, if you look at this graphic, most of the other SEC teams, or schools, I should say, are kind of within shouting distance of each other.
Sure.
And then A&M looks like a rocket ship. If we're all standing on flat ground, A&M's little graph looks like a rocket ship going to the moon. And so, the fact that they have not only paid big money to go get coaches, but they've paid massive money to get rid of coaches as well. And they're in this kind of never-ending cycle at this point. And, there's talk, though, about the A&M baseball coach already being on the hot seat.
Yeah, so Mike Early, who was the assistant under Schlossnagel when they went to the national championship last year and lost to Tennessee, obviously inherited the job once Schlossnagel went to Texas. Again, still the team was projected to be the number one team. A lot of guys coming back for this year, and they've clearly underperformed. And, to make matters worse, as Chris pointed out, Missouri has 3 wins in conference play. All 3 of those wins came against Texas A&M a couple weeks ago. So they're the one team that couldn't manage to beat the worst team by a country mile in the SEC. So that compiles on to this, obviously. Now the question becomes, okay, if they did want to move on for a year, I don't know what his buyout is necessarily, that's just going to add more to that already insane amount of money they're paying for coaches not to be there anymore.
Yeah, and it is. I pulled up that graph, and we do have to give the caveat that we are relying on the person who put this together, right? Like, I haven't verified these numbers. They look right to me, just passing the smell test.
Do we know who put it together?
Matt Stahl, I think. Wait, Nope. That's actually AL.com. That makes it more.
Yeah.
I trust it. Okay.
You don't trust Matt Stahl?
Well, he said, love doing very serious public records reporting. Maybe he did it. For
Okay.
he did it. Yeah.
All
So
right.
he did it for AL.com. But, you look at this thing, and so there's multiple takeaways. I mean, yes, A&M, their numbers skewed by the Jimbo Fisher contract, but now you look at it and you say, well, that was a bad contract because of how it turned out. You had to fire him. You had to pay him gobs of money. If you're South Carolina, they in this metric were the second lowest. Alabama was the only other one that was lowest in the fiscal year 2024 in terms of severance spending, right? And so if you're South Carolina, like you look at the fact that, yes, you did have the Will Muschamp buyout. You had some buyout dollars for Frank Martin, but this thing hasn't snowballed on them over the years. Before Will Muschamp, your previous two coaches for football walked away. So I know this is fiscal year 2024, but there tends to be there can be a snowball effect if you're having to fire a bunch of coaches in a row, and then like Tennessee went through this for a while before they found Heupel. Like you're firing Jeremy Pruitt, you're firing the guy before him, and it kind of just compounds on you. Now it also doesn't mean that you can't spend some money on severance buyouts, and that doesn't necessarily mean you've not been successful. Number 3 in this metric is Texas. They're pretty good at various things, football.
Yep.
Women's basketball, but like baseball. They're good at several sports, and they've spent some. So you don't want to be, though, at the top of this chart and then have the results that you just laid out.
Yeah. Texas, you said, was 3?
Yep. Texas A&M, Auburn, and then Texas.
But isn't Texas...
Oh, yeah, not even close. I mean, so...
Like, I don't even count them as...
A&M broke the graph. Like, the top is $25 million, and they're past it, and Texas is between 5 and 10, probably 7.5.
How many would you have to add up to get to what Texas A&M is paying?
Oh, it's,
like the bottom
over
10.
times, 4 times.
The top 10?
Yeah.
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 I mean, not even close. And it does, I mean, there's been a lot of talk about buyouts for certain reasons around here. And, I'm not saying you should, I'm not saying that should be your goal. Hey, we want to do what A&M's doing. But
pile this thing up.
Yeah. Sometimes you got to spend on a buyout.
I do agree with the sentiment generally. I'm speaking generally that you got to be more cognizant of costs nowadays than you were even last year.
Yeah.
2 years ago, 10 years ago. But I don't think you want to make like long-term decisions on your program based only on buyout figures, right? You look at what Texas did. Texas has paid out some money. They haven't paid gobs of money, and they're still very successful, right? So sometimes you got to pay a buyout,
Yeah.
And here's the thing. Buyout is do we even know what the word buyout means anymore? Buyout is like a dirty word.
Yeah.
And in some cases, a buyout is just a contract.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying? Like right now, like if of course, I mean, it's been talked about, so we'll talk about it. Like Paul Maneri.
Mm-hmm.
He's hired, 5-year deal. The first couple of years of the contract, it's just we owe you what's on the contract. That's really not even a buyout. That's just a guaranteed contract. You know what I'm saying? Like
liquidated damages.
You can't hire someone and be like, oh, hey, we can fire you after year 1.
Yeah.
Like that's just not. Then it's not a. What's that contract worth?
Yeah.
And a buyout actually lowers the amount you owe the person.
It does, but you just have to pay it a lot sooner. Like what Jimbo Fisher got, was it like 80% of his money?
Yeah, they had to
like
cut a big check
the first 30 days after he was fired. Like, yeah, you're planning on paying him the $10 million annually for the next 10 years. You obviously didn't get it at that point, so you have to front load that money, which is why.
But you're buying out the rest of the contract.
You're still paying the same money or less money.
No, less money in a lot of cases.
A lot of money, but still less money over a period of time. You just have to pay it in a lot shorter of a window.
Yeah, and so, but right now, when people start throwing out that, well, you would owe Maneri, blah, 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 that's just what's left on the contract.
Yep.
How are you going to hire a big-time coach and be like, hey, so the first 2 years of this contract, it's not actually guaranteed.
Yeah.
Like that, other than for calls, which is a completely different story, just on-field results, it's not that South Carolina said, hey, we're going to make this buyout be $5 million. That's just what is left on the contract, you know?
Yeah. And like Chris said, we have to be more consciously aware of numbers now. I know we kind of talk about numbers or money in terms of like, well, anybody can come up with any amount. But now with revenue sharing right on the horizon, everybody's got to be specific about what they're spending, where it's going. Because, again, every dollar is going to be valuable going forward on how competitive you can be in a lot of these sports.
Yeah, and at the same time, does it not feel like, though, especially for SEC schools, for the Power 5, now Power 4, for years we've heard, well, we got to be careful about this. Got to
tighten the belt.
Magically, that money just finds a way to exist.
That it does.
I know it's very easy to sit here and spend somebody else's money.
You hit up your wealthy booster and say, hey, I want to get this guy out of here. What can you do for me?
Or ticket prices go up 400% in the past few years.
Or, look at Tennessee. Look at other schools are going to follow. Hey, there's room for more advertisements. Let's put a sponsorship on the field, maybe. So, hey, we need this money for rev share. I don't know if we can pay all this. Oh, magically, all of a sudden we can.
Speaking of money, does Ari Wasserman think the most expensive team in college football is going to win the national championship? We'll discuss that coming up next. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. That was Chris on your Tuesday on the game. Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West Chris with you on your Tuesday here on The Game. Don't forget to go to 1075game.com and purchase the craft beer card. Now just $59. It is a $300 value, all yours on the Sweet Deals tab. Again, on 1075thegame.com. 103 days away from kickoff. A lot of lists, projections, all those kind of things going to be coming out over the course of the next couple months, and including, and it's a lot more fun to do now as opposed to when it was a 14 playoff, your 12-team college football playoff projection. Ari Wasserman of On3 put out his yesterday, one that I don't think South Carolina fans are going to enjoy very much. One, for the fact that Clemson's making a very deep run in this thing, and two, the other rival, that being the Illinois Fighting Illini, have also made Ari Wasserman's field as the 2025 version of Indiana.
Yeah, direct your hate to Ari's Twitter.
A lot of orange in this thing.
Didn't Boise State make it again?
Boise State made it again as the 12.
Now, and I saw some people giving him flack on that too, which my first impression as well was, wait, what? You know, they lost one of the best running backs in modern college football history. But also, that's the way the thing is designed, you know, that somebody who's non-Power 4 is going to have a shot. And
Boise's always one of those teams in that conversation every year, pretty much.
Yeah, so in his opinion, they've got the best shot. And, you know, and I honestly can't speak to it. I don't know what Boise has coming back, what they brought in, all that stuff. But, yeah, Illinois, as much as they did get a good win over South Carolina, credit to them. Are they ready to take that step? I personally would be a little surprised. They lost the running back.
Yeah, he went to Georgia.
The big kid, transferred to Georgia, much to the delight of Tyler. And, you know, their best receiver opted out of the bowl game against South Carolina. And that kid, I was watching some of their stuff getting ready for the bowl game. That dude is a freak.
Yeah,
and
Pat Bryant.
yeah, he's a stud. So they'll miss him, get their quarterback back, but I don't know. I mean, could you see it? Of course, this is the time of year where it's easy to kind of crush projections, but it's all meaningless at this point.
And it's fun conversation. And what I wanted to get into, we were talking about money there a moment ago, is, you know, last year we knew going into the year Ohio State had the most expensive roster in college football, somewhere around $20 million. And yeah, they had the setback against Michigan, but at the end of the day, they still stood at the top, hoisting the trophy when it was all said and done. This year, we were talking about Texas having a roster worth between $35 and $40 million. Ari Wasserman, to no surprise, has them winning the national championship. So it's like, this is all fun and games of who's going to be in the field, who's going to make the 12 and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, are we just going to be talking about, again, the most expensive roster winning at the end of the day?
I mean, I would like to think no. And, you know, here's the thing. Ohio State did have to take a interesting route to get there themselves. And so I don't think – I think it's like any athletics, man. Look at MLB. There's no salary cap there, and the Yankees spend the most every year, you know, or the Mets, and they're not all – I mean, they haven't won the thing in forever. And
Things are going well with Juan Soto.
Yeah, I know, right? And now, you know, you have the Dodgers out there, obviously, you know, trying to outspend everybody right now, and they've got a great shot to win it, I think. But still, it doesn't guarantee. Now, does it guarantee you're probably going to have the resources to build a better roster? I would think so. But as A&M has shown us, just spending a lot of money does not necessarily guarantee you success. But we are at a point where are we eventually going to get some type of, for lack of a better word, a salary cap that regulates this stuff a little bit? But right now, yeah, if you just want to outspend everybody, you can potentially go win a title, and then it probably honestly pays for itself for your university.
Well, I go back to Nick Saban's quote. I mean, he's had many over the years, but I think it was on Game Day last year. They're talking about it, and he's like, you know, you want to spend whatever $20 million, great. If you spend it on the wrong guys, you're bleep out of luck, you know. And
he actually said the word on TV.
He did
right?
say the word. I didn't.
Yeah.
And if you know, the first case study of this actually, while we're piling on A&M on the show, was A&M. a couple years ago.
22, right?
Yeah, remember when they had – now, I don't know if the figures were what Sliced Bread reported. Remember how Jimbo went on a rant against Sliced Bread?
Yep.
Whoever that was. I don't know what the figures were, but they had promised some big NIL deals. Maybe they fulfilled some big NIL deals. And they had a roster that was very talented. They brought in a historically good recruiting class. Most of those guys are not there. They had some, but there was kind of a mass exodus from that class. And so I think to Nick Saban's point, you got to approach it in a hybrid way. It can't be, we want that guy, go pay that guy what he wants, and we'll just bring him in. You do have to merge it. You also have to have, Wes used the word resources, you got to have the resources to where if you've got a guy who wants to come or you have a good opportunity to get, that you're not going in with a low ball offer, frankly, compared to what everybody else could give. I mean, put yourself in an athlete's shoes in your own profession. If you've got a bunch of good options and one of them is significantly lower than the other, the odds of you picking that one are probably pretty low also, corresponding moves. So you got to have resources. And a lot of the teams that, these are just projections, of course. But my suspicion is the teams that ultimately make the college football playoff will have at least a very healthy NIL program, if not one of the best in the country.
Well, let's look at his Final Four here. Texas, obviously. Ohio State speaks for itself. Penn State, I think their NIL situation's pretty good. I wouldn't say they're top sender, but also Clemson. Now, Clemson, very talented roster, but we've not known them to be the best spenders of NIL or the most active in the transfer portal until it has recently where Dabo finally dipped his toe in. They kind of seem like the anomaly here, though, again, looked at as one of the better rosters in college football this year.
Well, and I think even Clemson basically, when was that? There was a turning point where Clemson basically said, hey, we're going to spend. And they wanted to let the world know we're not going to be outspent. And maybe that's not true from a literal standpoint, but even Clemson, and it's not just a transfer portal thing, look at who they've been able to maintain and keep on that roster. Because Clemson, no Gamecock fan wants to hear it, but they're going to recruit. They've recruited from the high school ranks about as well as anybody over the last, decade. And so if you take those guys and then start spending and keep them on that roster, then all of a sudden you have, this is, in some ways, we thought, hey, maybe NIL evens things out, and there has been parity, and it does spread the talent out a little bit more. But then you look at the teams that end up at the top of this thing, is it just a new way to land on the Blue Bloods? Now, I think for Penn State, because you have so many elements involved here now, right? You do have NIL, you have transfer portal, but the bigger playoff. For Penn State, the expansion of the playoff is the best thing that could have ever happened to them.
Yep.
Because Penn State has consistently had good football teams. They just have not quite had elite football teams. So now with a bigger playoff, being a really, really good, consistently good football team in a power conference, one of the top two conferences, puts you in the thing. And then if you get in the thing, you may win it. But even if you don't, which we saw last year, I think that emboldens them, empowers them to say, well, hey, we're just a few players away. We just need a little more money. And so now you've set yourself up for success. I don't know if there's any team out there, any program out there that all this, especially the expanded playoff, has been better for than Penn State.
Yeah, no, absolutely. They've perennially been, I think, when you go back and look at the history of the 14 playoff, if it was expanded out to 12, they would have made it almost every single year just about, based on how good those teams were. They just have not been able to get over the hump of beating the Ohio States, beating the Michigans, teams like that. But, again, Ari Wasserman has them at least making the semifinals, once again this year. And, again, we're going to see a million of these projections and predictions of what 12-team playoff field is going to be like. But, again, I think a lot of them are going to feature Texas being the winner because, again, we talk about them having the best overall roster. They were obviously very close to getting there last year, and we'll see what happens in the 2025 season. We'll come back and wrap up the hour. I think I may have found the worst youth sports parent of all time. I'll let you guys hear about that coming up next. Is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs here on the game.
This morning, a shocking moment caught on video when coaches accused a child of being too old to compete.
I want to see birth certificates when this game's done.
The target of that shouting? Brinley Stevens, an 11-year-old softball player from Astoria, Oregon. She just hit a line drive when coaches from the opposing team stormed the field and began questioning her age in front of everyone in the stands.
I was holding back my tears because I was like, oh my gosh, she's out there by herself. There's these two adults are confronting her. Thank God that our coach was there to step in between.
Brinley is
that was a news report out of Oregon. Welcome back in, by the way, the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. I think I have found the worst youth sports parent of all time. An 11-year-old girl who stands at 5'11", hit a line drive in a 5th grade softball game and was confronted, as you heard there, loudly by the opposing coaches who did not think she was actually 11 years old. That coach has been suspended, by the way, by the league. But we talk about bad sports parents all the time. That one might take the cake as one of the worst I've ever heard of.
Yeah, it's the parents that make it tough, honestly, in youth sports. I mean, I've told y'all my story about filling in as an umpire and then retiring after that because I was getting cussed out as a high school kid.
You were cheating for the other team, Wes. They paid you before the game to give them favorable calls. That's how this always works.
Yes, I'm set for life to this day because of that Little League game. But, no, I mean, I feel like, unfortunately, we just see, I'm not even fazed by this because we see it so much. It's bad, man. The parents make it, some parents, I should say, make it really tough on the kids.
You know, one thing that I've noticed recently, and there's actually, related to youth sports, some social media conversation recently about the rising costs, not just of youth sports, for kids to participate. It's turned into a big business, right? But the prices to get into the tournaments that your kids play in, that you pay for them to play in, and then you have to pay to get in. I mean, there was one that went around the other day. It was a basketball tournament. And a day ticket for an adult, again, even the parents or grandparents or whoever.
You're already paying for the kids to be on the team.
$40. Jeez. You can get you a weekend pass for $90. If you're 6 to 12 years old, you got to pay $25 to get into brother or sister's game. You know, and these things have gotten, I don't think this is actually going to help the parents that are yelling because now they're going to say, I've
invested even more in this.
$100 to get in this game, and Wes is blowing the calls. You know, they're not going to help.
Wes, you going to come out of retirement anytime soon?
No, thanks.
How would you handle a parent yelling at the coach on the other team yelling at an 11-year-old because they think they're fudging their age?
Oh, I'm tossing everybody. Full-on ump show.
I saw one the other day. It was an older clip, but it resurfaced of an ump giving a warning at a youth baseball game, I think it was. And the parents kept.
Is this the guy that ended the game?
Yeah, he said, I'll forfeit this game if you don't stop. And they kept going. He said, ball game. That's it. He just walked off.
It's an uncomfortable ride home.
Yeah. Speaking of the cost of this stuff, though, Chris, did you catch my new thing I'm on now? So I told you I was in Rock Hill, Fort Mill last week. Why does Columbia not have a sports complex, a multi-sport complex, to have people from all over the state in for big events?
Our members actually had some, on the Insiders Forum on Gamecock Central, actually had some answers, but going beyond that.
But all the answers were things that
should be able to be fixed.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a nice facility.
Rock Hill Fort Mill has 4 or 5 facilities better than any in Columbia.
It's been a huge boon for them.
Let's make it happen. That's all I'm saying.
I agree.
Let's do it. Be helpful. That'll do it for the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Halftime show, myself, Terry Ford. Up next on your Tuesday on the Game.